So a lot of the stuff I'm going to show you up now, the technical stuff, is actually from an app that I've been working on with Gareth and Justin, and we've got almost ready. I think by next Cocoaheads we should be ready to release it. But I'll just step through some of the things that we've been doing and talk about some of the technical aspects of using UIScrollView, some of the things that can happen along the way. The apps, what we're going to talk about is just building like a little simple photo viewer. This photo viewer is just going to have like a bunch of photos. You know, I've got like a whole set of photos I've taken with my camera. We'll have like a kind of grid kind of view like this, where we'll be able to see, you know, a bunch of photos. Give it a tap, and that'll then just push through to on a navigation controller, push through to another scroll view, and then on that scroll view we'll be able to then swipe across. And as we swipe, we'll see just like the photos at the next, you know, particular slide coming in, until we get to the point where the next one's coming in, and then we'll be able to tap back to the main screen. So very simple kind of application. We'll sort of step through, you know, how that all hangs together. So let's flip over to Xcode. So can you guys see that at the back?
Yeah, do you want to share?
It's probably okay. We'll see how it goes. So here's the first party app up and running. So we've just got a bunch of cells that are up in this grid. I'll just step through the code to actually get this part up and running. It's not too difficult. I'll walk through this code, and what we'll do is then in each sort of successive update add a little bit of functionality and see what happens along the way. So it's really one view controller, this photo views controller, that's got a custom scroll view class. It's just a derivative of scroll views. And in the actual scroll view, the actual photo views controller, in the load view, we just initialize that, set up some of the properties. The actual scroll view itself takes the height and width of each cell, so that's just the dimensions of each of these kinds of cells around this lovely picture at Tasmania. This old house that was in Tasmania on holiday when I was there. So that just sets up what the actual dimensions are going to be. Then in view did load, we just go to our model, create an instance of our model controller, and then just iterate through that, creating a whole bunch of photo views that then get added to that scroll view. And then as they get added, the layout happens inside the actual scroll view. There's just the famous return yes statement for auto rotation. And then inside the actual animation transition, there's just a check to see here, if we're in portrait mode, then we'll just take the portrait dimensions, and if we're in landscape mode, we'll take the landscape dimensions. That doesn't matter too much when you're on the phone, because in the phone you can hide the navigation bar and the status bar, but on the iPad you can only sort of hide the nav bar. The status bar can't actually be hidden, so you've got this 20 pixel difference in the orientations that cause a slight difference in the pixels that you can get a perfect aspect ratio with. Then there's dealloc, as usual. So over on the scroll view, we've just got here to descend into UIScrollView, the properties that indicate how big the cells are going to be, some storage for the views, that's just marked as read-only, and then a method that we use to put them on. That's what the controller was using to add the photo views. And on the actual implementation of that, it's just pretty straightforward. We've got storage for the photo views. We've implemented that method when we actually add the scroll views, just to add it as a subview, and then layout subviews does the actual work. So here we've just got you know, a couple of constants. Variables at the top, x and y is the positioning of the cells. And so we'll just go through all of the different photo views that are represented inside the scroll view, and just create frames based on, you know, where it can be. So the x and y gets incremented as we go along. Just got the cluster fraction based on the item width and the item height, and then as it gets past the size of the bounds, the y gets dropped down, and we get the next row and the next row and the next row. And then again we set up the content size, and that's then what gives us the scrolling. That's also what gets you having rotations working. So when you do your rotations, the you know, scroll view gets to lay out its subviews, and layout subviews automatically lays it out as the bounds have changed. On the actual photo view itself, that's just a UI view. We've got a UI image view holding the content, and that's just been added as subview in its layout subframe. Layout subviews just make sure that it takes up the entire size of the cell. And on the model side, this is just quite small and simple stuff. It's just basically an array of photos. These photos are packaged in the app, and they just get loaded up from the bundle. They're just JPEGs in this photos directory. Just for simplicity, it just loads that up, creates a photo object, and adds it as content. And the photos themselves just have a path, and there's two read-only properties that are built up off of the actual path itself. So the title of the image we take as being, we effectively split on the path separator, and then take what's at the end as being the name of the photo. So that's the file name, basically. So cheating a little bit. And then the actual image content's just read directly off the disk.
Can we just take the last one? Is there a method?
Yeah, so you could just do that as well, for sure.
Just in case they change the slashes to colons like the Mac has or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Alright, so I'll stop that and flip across to the device. Let's run it on that device and see how it looks. Okay. So we've got a crash. What do you reckon? What do you guys reckon might have happened with a crash with that kind of content? I'll give you a hint. We'll go back to the simulator.
Memory. Yeah.
Okay. The photo viewer. We're using 245 meg of memory, and that's certainly too much to get up and running on the device. So we just got killed. We got ejected before we even got the first screen up and running. So that's a little tough. This sort of leads me to my first rule of UIScrollView development. Always run it on the device, or at least run on the device often. You don't have to run it all the time on the device, but it kind of makes sense because your iPad is fixed dimensions, and your scroll view lets your iPad go from this size to infinite, you know, if you so configured it. But scroll view doesn't actually give you infinite memory, and it doesn't give you infinite processing power. So yeah, check what you're doing on the device. I'll flip back across to an updated version. So in this version here, I've just put a little loop in here and stopped it at 5, and we'll see that should be enough to actually get it up and running. But the problem is it doesn't scroll, and we haven't got enough content, so it's not a very compelling experience. So there's another trick that we can do.
What's actually using the memory? Was it loading all of the images into the array? Is that?
Yeah.
It's all the image data.
Yeah, it's all the image data.
And creating all the subviews.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the JPEGs. Like if they're JPEGs, they might be really small.
Yeah.
But when it actually loads them and decompresses them.
Yeah, decompress them into memory, and then you go squeeze them down to the thumbnail size, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are about 1500 by 1000, so they're quite reasonably large images, so pretty full of content. So we've got like a little cheat trick here that just to get the main screen up and running, we're just applying a shrink factor. So whereas before we were just reading the path, creating an image directly off the path, we're just going to apply a shrink factor and then shrink it down by 3 times. So instead of it being this big, it's now going to be a third of the size. And that'll be enough to get it up and running. The other thing that I've done is just add here next to the image view, I've just add a little label. So this label's got the actual title from the image. And there's a couple of properties I've put on here. There's a clear color background, and I've set the shadow opacity and shadow offset. So that's enough to get it up and running. You don't really have to be able to see or read any of that, just to see that we've got a page full of content. See how it scrolls. It's nice and chunky. Might do
It's an Android experience.
Ouch, but so true.